The giant crystal building on planet Vex Star sparkled under 3 purple suns. Inside the main hall, 12 different alien species sat around a huge round table. Each species looked very different from the others. Some had many arms, some had big eyes, and some could speak without moving their mouths at all. Today was a special day. The Galactic Council was meeting to decide if humans could join their group. For thousands of years, only the most advanced species in the galaxy could become members. Each species had to prove they were smart enough and strong enough to belong. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the center of the room. He was a tall man with short brown hair and a clean blue uniform. Next to him stood Lisa Carter, a woman with red hair who carried a small computer. They had traveled very far from Earth to be here today. Jake looked around the room at all the strange creatures staring at him. Some had eyes like insects. Others had skin like fish scales. A few looked like they were made of living rock. But all of them seemed to think humans were not good enough to join their club. The first alien to speak was very tall and thin. It had 4 arms and eyes that looked like a fly's eyes. This was a Zephyrian, and it made clicking sounds when it talked. "These humans say they can travel faster than light," the Zephyrian said with a laugh. "But look at their ships. They use fire and chemicals to fly. Our ships are alive and can think for themselves." Another alien made bubbling sounds. This one lived in water and had to wear a special suit to breathe air. "They still throw metal bullets at their enemies," it said. "How silly. We can change the shape of matter itself with our minds." Lisa stepped forward and opened her computer. Pictures appeared in the air, showing Earth's cities, spaceships, and inventions. "We may not have the same technology as you," she said, "but humans have made great progress in a short time. We have only been in space for a few hundred years." A big reptile alien with sharp teeth laughed loudly. This was a Corvin, a species known for being great warriors. "Short time is right," he said. "We have been fighting wars across the stars for millions of years. What have humans ever fought that was truly dangerous?" The Corvin stood up, his scales shining under the purple light. "Your armies use ground vehicles and flying machines that can barely leave your atmosphere. What good would you be against the real threats in space?" Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he kept his voice calm. "Humans may be young, but we are quick to learn. We solve problems in ways that might surprise you." This made several aliens laugh. A creature that looked like it was made of living light spoke without using its mouth. The words just appeared in everyone's mind. "Surprise us? Little human, we have seen civilizations rise and fall while your species was still living in caves." Dr. Amanda Foster, Earth's best scientist, walked over to stand with Jake and Lisa. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. "Perhaps our methods are different from yours," she said, "but humans have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and countless wars. We adapt and overcome." The floating light creature seemed amused. "Adapt? Child, every species must adapt to survive. That is nothing special." More aliens joined the conversation. Each one seemed to think humans were weak and backward. They talked about weapons that could destroy planets, ships that could cross the galaxy in days, and minds that could see the future. "Your species still fights each other," said another alien that looked like a giant flower. "You have wars on your own world. How can you help keep peace in the galaxy?" Amanda tried to explain that humans were working to solve their problems. But the aliens did not want to listen. They had already decided that Earth was not ready to join their advanced group. The leader of the council was an ancient being that looked like a tree made of metal. Its voice was deep and slow. "We have heard enough," it said. "All those who think humans should join the Galactic Council, raise your hand tentacle, or appendage. Jake, Lisa, and Amanda watched as not a single alien raised anything. The vote was clear. 0 votes for humans. The metal tree being spoke again. The decision is final. Humans are not ready to join the Galactic Council. But then an alien with smooth blue skin and large black eyes stood up. This was an Altarian, known for being wise and fair. "We do not reject you with cruelty," it said, in a soft voice. "Your species shows promise. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have grown beyond your current limits, we will look at your application again." The alien continued, "Go back to your small blue world. Learn to make better weapons. Build ships that do not need fuel. Discover how to read minds or bend reality with thought. Then come back to us." Jake felt his heart sink. All the work, all the preparation, all the hope that Earth had set with them was wasted. The aliens saw humans as nothing more than smart animals who had just learned to use tools. Lisa closed her computer with a snap. Amanda removed her glasses and cleaned them slowly, thinking about how to tell Earth that they had failed Dot as the maid. 3 humans walked toward the exit. They could hear the aliens talking among themselves. Some were already planning to forget about Earth completely. Others wondered if humans would even survive long enough to apply again, that they stopped at the door and turned back to look at the council one more time. "You may think we are weak now," he said loudly, "but humans have a way of surprising people who underestimate us." The reptile Corvin laughed again. "Surprise us, little human. We have weapons that can crack moons in half. We have lived for millions of years. What could your short-lived species possibly show us that we have not already seen?" Jake, Lisa, and Amanda left the crystal building and walked back to their small human ship. As their ship lifted off from the purple planet, Lisa looked back at the sparkling building. "They think we are nothing," she said sadly. Amanda was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. "Maybe that will be their mistake," she said. The trip back to Earth took many weeks. When they finally arrived, they had to tell everyone that the galaxy did not want humans to join their club. People were angry and sad, but most were not surprised. However, far away in the dark space between galaxies, something very old and very hungry was starting to wake up. Ancient machines that had been sleeping for millions of years were beginning to move again. The Galactic Council had laughed at humans and sent them away. But soon they would learn that sometimes the species you think is weakest might be the one you need most. None of them knew that their greatest test was coming, and that the primitive humans they had rejected might be the only ones who could save them all. 6 months had passed since the humans went back to Earth with empty hands. The Galactic Council had forgotten about them completely. The aliens were busy with their own important matters, trading goods between star systems and making new laws for their advanced civilizations. Then the messages started coming. The first report came from the edge of Zephyrian space. 3 colonies had gone completely silent. No radio signals, no ships coming or going, nothing at all. The Zephyrian leaders thought it was just broken communication equipment. They sent a patrol to check on the colonies. The patrol never came. Back, more ships were sent. These ships had the best Zephyrian technology. They could repair themselves if damaged, and had weapons that could slice through metal like paper. But these ships also disappeared without sending a single message. Finally, the Zephyrians sent their fastest scout ship with orders to stay far away and just look. What the scouts saw made the pilots sick with fear. The 3 colony worlds were still there, but they were completely empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of everything. The planets looked like someone had used a giant vacuum cleaner to suck away every plant, every animal, every piece of life. Even the oceans were gone. Floating around the dead worlds were huge ships. These ships were bigger than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. They looked like they were made of both metal and living tissue at the same time. The ships moved in ways that did not make sense, bending and twisting like giant space forms. The scout pilot sent one message back to his leaders before his ship was destroyed. The message had only 2 words. They returned. Every alien species in the galaxy knew what those words meant. The Devourers had come back. Far away from the Zephyrian colonies, Captain Ryan Blake was commanding the human ship Defiance. Ryan was a young man with black hair and serious dark eyes. He had been exploring space near Earth when his radio operator picked up a strange signal. "Captain," said Katie Walsh, the ship's engineer. She was a small woman with blonde hair who could fix any machine. "I am getting a transmission, but it is not in any human language." Ryan walked over to her station. "Can you figure out what it says?" Sam Parker, the communications officer, was working with the computer to translate the message. Sam was a tall man with red hair who was very good with languages. "I think it is a call for help," he said. "Something about being under attack." Ben Torres, the weapons specialist, looked up from his station. Ben was a strong man with brown skin and black hair. "Captain, should we help?" "We do not even know who sent the message." Ryan thought for a moment. Earth Command had told all human ships to stay away from alien problems. But someone was asking for help, and humans had always tried to help others when they could. "Set course for the signal," Ryan said. "We will take a look." The Defiance flew toward the source of the signal. What they found was horrible. A Nereid research station was being attacked by 3 massive ships. The Nereid ships looked like beautiful sea creatures made of metal and light, but they were being torn apart like paper. The attacking ships were enormous. They were at least 10 times bigger than the largest human ship. Their hulls seemed to be alive, changing shape and color as Ryan watched. They had weapons that shot beams of energy, but the beams seemed to learn and adapt with each shot. "My God," whispered Katie. "What are those things?" The Nereid ships were fighting back with their plasma weapons. These weapons could change matter itself, turning metal into gas, or gas into solid rock. The aliens had been very proud of these weapons when they mocked humans. But the attacking ships adapted to every weapon fired at them. When the Nereid ships shot plasma beams, the enemy hulls changed to absorb the energy. When the Nereid ships tried to ram them, the enemy ships became soft and bounced the attackers away. Ryan watched in horror as the beautiful Nereid vessels were destroyed one by one. The enemy ships moved like living things, surrounding their prey and slowly taking them apart. "Captain," Sam said quietly, "the enemy ships are doing something to the research station." Ryan looked through his telescope and saw machines coming out of the giant ships. These machines looked like metal spiders, but they moved like they were alive. They crawled all over the research station, taking it apart piece by piece. But they were not just destroying the station. They were eating it. The metal spiders were consuming everything, including the aliens inside. Ryan could see the spiders growing larger as they ate. "We have to help them," Ben said, his hand moving toward the weapon controls. "With what?" Katie asked. "Our biggest gun would not even scratch those things." Ryan knew she was right. The Defiance had simple human weapons. They shot metal bullets and small missiles. Compared to the enemy ships, the Defiance was like a toy. But Ryan could not just watch while innocent beings were killed. "Ben, target the smallest enemy ship. Maybe we can distract them long enough for any survivors to escape." Ben fired every weapon the Defiance had. The missiles and bullets hit the enemy ship and actually did some damage. Small holes appeared in the alien hull, and some kind of green liquid leaked out. For a moment, Ryan felt hope. But then the enemy ship began to change. The holes sealed themselves up, and the hull became thicker. Within minutes, the ship fired the same weapons back. At the Defiance, "They learned from our attack," Sam said with fear in his voice. The enemy ships turned toward the small human vessel. Ryan realized he had made a terrible mistake. The Defiance could not fight these things. They adapted too quickly. "Send a message to Earth," Ryan ordered. "Tell them what we saw here. Tell them the galaxy is in danger." Katie worked quickly to send the message. Just as she finished, the enemy ships fired. The Defiance was torn apart in seconds. Back on Earth, General Patricia Hughes received the message from the Defiance. Patricia was a tough woman with gray hair who had served in the military for 30 years. She read the message 3 times before she believed it. The message described ships that could adapt to any weapon, enemies that ate entire planets, and a threat unlike anything humans had ever imagined. But the most important part of the message was a video recording that Captain Blake had managed to send. The video showed the enemy ships learning and changing. It showed weapons that became useless after being used once. It showed technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. But Patricia noticed something the aliens might not have seen. The enemy ships were very good at adapting to patterns and logical attacks. But when Captain Blake fired his weapons in a random, chaotic way, the enemy ships took longer to adapt. Dr. Amanda Foster was called to study the video. She watched it, many times, taking notes and running calculations. Finally, she came to Patricia with her conclusions. "These devourers are incredibly advanced," Amanda said, "but they think like machines. They look for patterns and logical responses. They learn by studying how their enemies behave." Patricia leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that every alien species we met thinks in logical, ordered ways. They make efficient weapons and use careful tactics. But humans are different. We are chaotic and unpredictable. We do things that do not make sense." Amanda pulled up more data on her computer. "The aliens laughed at us for being disorganized and random. But maybe that randomness is exactly what we need to fight an enemy that learns from order." Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Corvin Empire, with its powerful military, was losing battles everywhere. The Altarian telepathic network was being cut apart system by system. Species that had mocked human technology were falling one after another. Patricia stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see human ships being built in the orbital shipyards. They looked rough and simple compared to alien vessels, but maybe that was their strength. "Doctor," she said slowly, "what if the galaxy rejected us not because we were too weak, but because we were too different?" Amanda smiled for the first time in days. "Then maybe it is time to show them what different can do." Earth began to prepare for war. Not the careful, logical war that aliens fought, but the messy, chaotic, unpredictable kind of war that humans knew best. If the galaxy would not accept them as equals, perhaps it was time to prove that being different was not a weakness. The Devourers had awakened, and they were destroying everything in their path. But they had never faced anything like humanity before. Soon, they would learn that chaos could be just as dangerous as order. The crystal building on Vextar was very different now. Instead of 12 alien species sitting around the big table, only 6 remained. 3 entire civilizations had been completely eaten by the Devourers. Their home worlds were now empty rocks. Floating in space, the remaining aliens looked scared and tired. The proud Zephyrian delegate sat with his insect head down. Half of his people were gone. The Corvin war chief no longer boasted about his mighty armies. Most of his ships had been destroyed trying to fight the unstoppable enemy. The metal tree leader of the council spoke in a slow, sad voice. "We have lost contact with the Outer Rim territories. The Devourers are moving toward the core worlds. At this rate, We have perhaps 6 months before they reach the center of our galaxy. The blue-skinned Altarian diplomat closed his large black eyes. Our telepathic network grows smaller each day. We can no longer sense our people on the frontier worlds. They are simply ... gone. Suddenly, the main doors to the council chamber opened. The aliens looked up in surprise as 3 humans walked into the room. They wore the same blue uniforms as before, but these were different people. Admiral Nicole Grant led the group. She was a woman with short silver hair and steel-gray eyes. Behind her walked Steve Cooper, a man with brown hair who carried a portable computer. The third human was Dr. Helen Martin, a younger woman with long black hair and intelligent green eyes. Zephyrian Delegate lifted his insect head. Humans, why have you returned? Have you come to watch us die? Admiral Grant walked to the center of the room, the same spot where Jake Morrison had stood months ago. But this time, she did not ask for permission to speak. We have come to offer our help, she said in a clear, strong voice. The Corvin War. Chief made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was bitter and angry. Help? What could your tiny species possibly do? We have weapons that can destroy moons. We have fought wars across the stars for millions of years. And we are losing. Badly. Dr. Martin stepped forward and activated her portable computer. Images appeared in the air, showing the Devourer ships and how they fought. Your weapons are very powerful, she said. But power is not the problem. Steve Cooper pointed to the images. The Devourers adapt to everything you do. They learn from your tactics and copy your technology. Your logical approach to warfare makes you predictable. The flower-like alien spoke in a weak voice. Of course, we are logical. Logic and order are the foundations of civilization. How else should we fight? Like humans, Admiral Grant said simply. This caused murmurs around the table. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. The Altarian diplomat opened his black eyes. Explain what you mean. Dr. Martin changed the images to show footage from Captain Blake's final battle. The small human ship had damaged a Devourer vessel using weapons that were weak compared to alien technology. But the important thing was how the weapons were used. Captain Blake did not follow any battle plan, Dr. Martin explained. He fired his weapons randomly. He changed direction without any pattern. He made decisions that did not make logical sense. She pointed to the damaged Devourer ship. Look at this. The enemy took several minutes to adapt to his chaotic attack. With their logical weapons, they adapt in seconds. Steve Cooper brought up more data. We have been studying the Devourer technology for months. Their ships are incredibly advanced, but they work like giant computers. They analyze threats, find patterns, and develop responses. Admiral Grant took over the explanation. But computers need patterns to analyze. If there are no patterns, they cannot adapt quickly enough. The metal tree leader made a deep rumbling sound. You are suggesting that disorder and chaos are better than order and logic? In this case, yes, Dr. Martin said. The Devourers have learned to counter every logical response in the galaxy. They expect efficient tactics and predictable weapons. They do not know how to handle pure randomness. Admiral Grant activated another display. This one showed human ships and weapons. They looked rough and simple compared to the beautiful alien vessels, but they had something the alien ships did not have. Our ships can be changed and rebuilt during battle, she explained. Our weapon systems can switch between different types of attacks without warning. Our tactics are based on improvisation and quick thinking. Steve Cooper pointed to a human destroyer. This ship can fire bullets, missiles, energy beams, and even pieces of junk at the enemy. The Devourers cannot predict what is coming next, because we do not know ourselves until we fire. The Corvin War Chief leaned forward. This sounds like madness, not strategy. Exactly, Admiral Grant said with a slight smile. Controlled madness, organized chaos, the kind of fighting that makes no sense to a logical mind. Dr. Martin showed them tactical plans that looked nothing like the careful alien battle formations. Human ships would attack from random directions, change their weapons constantly, and make decisions that seemed completely crazy. Your people have spent millions of years perfecting logical warfare, she said. But the Devourers have had time to learn from all of it. They know how civilized species fight. They have never seen anything like humans. The Altarian diplomat spoke with his mind. But surely there must be some logic to your methods? Steve Cooper shook his head. That is the point. We train our officers to think outside normal rules. When they see a problem, they do not look for the most efficient solution. They look for the most unexpected solution. Admiral Grant pulled up recordings of human military exercises. The aliens watched in amazement as human soldiers did things that made no sense. They used broken equipment as weapons, turned their weaknesses into advantages, and won battles by doing exactly what their enemies did not expect. This is how we survived on Earth, Admiral Grant explained. We did not have the strongest bodies or the sharpest teeth, but we could think in ways that other animals could not predict. The council members looked at each other. The idea of fighting without logic was frightening to them. Their entire civilizations were built on order and efficiency. The metal tree. Leader spoke slowly. Even if your methods work, how can we coordinate a galactic defense using chaos? Dr. Martin smiled. Very carefully. We have developed a command structure that allows for maximum unpredictability while maintaining basic coordination. Each ship captain makes their own tactical decisions, but we all work toward the same goal. Admiral Grant stepped closer to the council table. We need your help too. Your weapons are more powerful than ours, and your ships are faster. But we need you to be willing to use them in ways that might seem wrong to you. Steve Cooper brought up a battle plan that looked like organized confusion. Human ships and alien ships were mixed together with no clear formation. We attack in waves, but each wave uses completely different tactics. The Devourers cannot adapt all of them at once. The Zephyrian delegate raised one of his 4 arms. What if this plan fails? What if chaos is not enough? Then we all die anyway, Admiral. Grant said bluntly. But if we do nothing, you will certainly be destroyed. At least this way, we have a chance. The council chamber was quiet for a long time. The aliens were thinking about something that went against everything they believed. But they were also thinking about their dead worlds and lost people. Finally, the Altarian diplomats stood up. The humans were right about one thing months ago. They said we would be surprised by what their species could do. The Corvin war chief growled softly. I still think this is madness. But our logical approach has failed completely. The metal tree leader looked at each council member. All in favor of accepting human assistance and trying their chaotic tactics? One by one, the aliens raised their hands, tentacles, and appendages. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the council was asking humans not just to join them, but to lead them. The species they had mocked and rejected was now their only hope for survival. Admiral Grant nodded grimly. Then we prepare for war, but not the kind of war you have ever fought before. We are going to show the Devourers what happens when chaos meets order. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most advanced solution was to throw away all the rules and try something completely different. The biggest fleet in galactic history gathered at the Helix Nebula. Hundreds of ships from 6 different species floated in space, waiting for the final battle. The alien ships were beautiful and sleek, like works of art that could fly. The human ships looked rough and patched together, like they had been built in someone's garage. But Admiral Nicole Grant was not worried about how the ships looked. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Resilience, watching the enemy approach on her screens. The Devourer fleet was massive. Each of their ships was bigger than an entire human city. "Admiral," said Steve Cooper from his station, "enemy fleet will be in range in 20 minutes. They have over 300 ships." Admiral Grant nodded. "Signal all vessels. Begin random deployment pattern 7. Across the fleet, human and alien ships started moving in ways that made no sense. There was no formation, no logical arrangement. Ships scattered in all directions like leaves blown by wind. The Zephyrian commander contacted the Resilience. His insect voice sounded worried. "Admiral Grant, your ships are moving randomly. How can we coordinate our attack?" "That is the point," Admiral Grant replied. "The Devourers expect us to have a plan, so we will not have one." Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the human destroyer Chaos. He was a young man with dark hair and a big smile. Even now, facing the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy, he was grinning. "All right, people," Danny said to his crew. "Remember what we learned in training. There are no rules in this fight. If something seems like a bad idea, it is probably perfect." The Devourers attacked first. Their massive ships fired beams of energy that could cut through planets. The alien fleet responded the way they always had, with careful formations and precise tactics. Within minutes, the Devourer ships began to adapt. Their hulls changed to absorb the energy weapons. Their own guns started copying the alien technology. It was the same pattern that had destroyed so many worlds. Then the human ships joined the battle. Captain Rodriguez fired his weapons in a pattern that made no sense. First bullets, then missiles, then energy beams, then chunks of metal from his cargo bay. The Devourers tried to adapt, but each shot was different from the last. "Katie," Danny called to his engineer. Katie Walsh had survived the destruction of the Defiance and now served on the Chaos. "How are our mystery boxes working?" Katie grinned as she watched her instruments. "Perfect, Captain. The enemy has no idea what we are going to shoot next, because our computers do not know either." The mystery boxes were Dr. Martin's invention. They were weapon systems that chose their ammunition randomly. Even the human crews did not know what their ships would fire until the trigger was pulled. Across the battlefield, other human ships were using equally strange tactics. The destroyer Mayhem, commanded by Captain Linda Ross, was firing its weapons backwards while flying in circles. The cruiser Bedlam under Captain Mike Chun was using its damaged engines as weapons, creating explosions that hurt the enemy ships. But the real surprise came when Lieutenant Ben Torres, the weapons specialist, who had served with Captain Blake, arrived in his new command. His ship was called the Pandemonium, and it was the strangest vessel in the human fleet. "All ships, this is Ben Torres." His voice came over the radio. "Watch this and learn something new." Ben deliberately crashed his ship into 3 Devourer vessels, but just before impact, his entire crew escaped in small pods. The ship exploded, taking the enemy vessels with it. "Try to adapt to that, you giant space bugs." Ben laughed as his pod was picked up by another human ship. The Devourers were confused. Their adaptation systems were designed to learn from patterns and logical attacks. But the humans were not using logic. They were using controlled insanity. Admiral Grant watched the battle from her command center. Dr. Martin released the nanites. Dr. Helen Martin pressed a button on her console. Millions of tiny robots poured out of the human ships. But these nanites were special. Each one made its own decisions about what to do. They did not follow any program or pattern. Some nanites attacked the Devourer hulls. Others disrupted their weapons. A few just flew around randomly, confusing the enemy sensors. The Devourers could not adapt because there was nothing consistent to learn from. The tide of battle began to turn. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers were taking serious damage. Their perfect adaptation systems were failing against pure randomness. The alien ships watched in amazement. The Corvan war chief spoke over the radio. "Admiral Grant, your people are magnificent. They fight like heroes from ancient legends." "No," Admiral Grant replied. "They fight like humans. This is what we do when our backs are against the wall." But the battle was not over. The largest Devourer ship, bigger than a moon, began to charge up a weapon that could destroy the entire fleet. Energy gathered around it like a small star. Captain Rodriguez saw the danger. "Katie, give me everything the ship has left." "Danny, if we use all our power at once, the ship will be destroyed," Katie warned. "Then we better make it count," Danny said with his usual grin. The chaos flew straight at the giant Devourer ship. Every human weapon fired at once. The ship's hull began to crack from the stress, but Danny kept flying forward, not at the last second. Katie ejected the ship's power core. The explosion was so big, it lit up the entire nebula. The giant Devourer ship was torn apart, and the shockwave damaged dozens of other enemy vessels. Dr. Martin smiled as she watched her scanners. The enemy adaptation systems are overloading. They cannot process random information fast enough. The remaining Devourer ships began to retreat. Their perfect learning systems had been broken by something they had never encountered before. Pure, unpredictable human chaos. As the enemy fled, the alien crews cheered. The Zephyrian commander spoke with amazement in his voice. "We did it. We actually defeated them." Admiral Grant was more cautious. "We won this battle, but the war is not over. There are more Devourer fleets out there." Steve Cooper looked up from his instruments. "Admiral, we are getting messages from across the galaxy. Other alien species want to know how we defeated the Devourers." "Tell them the truth," Admiral Grant said. "Sometimes the best way to win is to stop trying to be perfect." The Altarian diplomat contacted the fleet. His mental voice was full of respect. "Admiral Grant, the Galactic Council formally invites humanity to join as full members. We also request that you help us rebuild our military tactics." Admiral Grant looked around at her crew. These were the same humans that the aliens had laughed at just months ago. Now those same aliens were asking to learn from them. "We accept," she said. "But remember, we are not trying to make you fight like humans. We are trying to teach you that there is more than one way to solve a problem." Dr. Martin pulled up reports from around the galaxy. The Devourers are retreating to deep space. Our tactics have damaged their learning systems. It will take them time to recover. Katie Walsh, now promoted to chief engineer, spoke from her station. "What happens next, Admiral?" Admiral Grant smiled as she looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. "Next, we teach the galaxy that being different is not a weakness. We show them that chaos and order can work together." The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy would never be the same. Military academies would teach new courses about creative thinking and flexible tactics. The rigid rules that had governed warfare for millions of years were being thrown out, and at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had been rejected for being too chaotic and unpredictable. They had saved the galaxy by being exactly what the aliens said they were. Years later, when historians wrote about the war against the Devourers, they would call it the day chaos defeated order. But the humans knew better. It was not chaos that won the war. It was the willingness to be different. The galaxy had laughed at humans for not following the rules. Now they understood that sometimes breaking the rules was the only way to survive. And sometimes the species you think is weakest turns out to be the strongest of all. Devourers had learned to counter every logical response in the galaxy, but they had never learned to handle the beautiful madness of human creativity. And that made all the difference.